Did you know that men go through their own version of menopause? They do. It's called andropause, and it can be a real shocker for men over 50. Today, we're diving deep into this lesser known issue that affects so many, but hardly anyone talks about it. I'm so excited because I've got Dr. Truong here, an expert in men's health and sexual dysfunction, to give us the lowdown. We'll also be diving into women's menopausal issues and how both men and women can improve their sexual health and relationships over 50. We're going to be getting into some pretty juicy, kind of taboo topics that you don't hear in your usual dinner conversation, so stick around. You don't want to miss this.
Okay.
Well, hello, Dr. Ann Truong. I'm so happy to see you here today. It was so great to meet you. And now we're finally having a sit down conversation about women in menopause, men in andropause. I know you are a specialist in both. And today I would love to pick your brain about all sorts of things having to do with both of those. But what my audience really doesn't know much about, at least what I don't know much about, is menopause, or that's a made up word for male menopause, which is really called, as I understand it, andropause. And I would
Yes.
love
Yes.
it if you could give us some insights about what actually happens in male menopause, so to speak,
Uh-huh.
and some of the issues that men often face and sometimes are caught by surprise by, and what women might not know either about their male spouses.
Right. So, andropause. So men do undergo menopause, like women undergo menopause, and it's around the same age, around, late 40s. But what men notice more is more subtle symptoms than women. Women's obvious, with the hot flashes and night sweats and all that. But with men, they undergo symptom changes at around mid 40s or late 40s because they start losing their testosterone after the age of 35 at 1% a year. And men are very dependent upon their hormone called testosterone. And when that level starts to dip, the symptoms that they start noticing most is that they lose more energy, motivation, like the things that they like to do, they don't enjoy doing as much, and also focus, meaning like at work their attention to tasks is diminished compared to, let's say, 10 years ago. So those are the symptoms that they would notice first, and then progressively, they will notice that their libido is decreased. And libido is really mean the sexual drive, desire, arousal. They don't notice so much as in whether they have any changes in their bedroom performance, but more subtlety as in libido and desire like they were before. But one of the things that really what andropause mean is that their testosterone level is decreased as the same way. And women have to deal with three different hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. But men have to deal with one hormone. It's always more complex with women, isn't it? But with men, it's really one hormone. It's pretty straightforward. Testosterone is responsible for libido, is responsible for energy, focus, is responsible for muscle building and decreased fat, and is responsible for sexual performance and desires. Actually, will testosterone prevent men from having anemia? That's why men have more red blood cells than women in red blood cells. And that testosterone will protect bones. It helps with bone density, making the bone more dense to prevent fractures. So if you look at a typical mid 60-year-old male, who may have fat around the belly, maybe a little fat around the chest area, and then decreased muscle mass, balding on the top of the hair, and then loss of hair on his arms, on his chest, even in the legs. Actually, loss of hair in the legs is a very subtle sign that testosterone is decreasing. And then also just decreasing the ability to perform athletic performance like he used to. So those are signs of andropause. Well, like I said, men only have one hormone to think about versus women. There's a balance of the three hormones first. But I want to mention, let's compare this to women, right? What's women menopause? Well, believe it or not, women out of the 3 hormones that she has more testosterone in her body than even estrogen and progesterone. But
Wow.
yeah, but it's just a lesser amount compared to men. But men has 100 times more testosterone than a woman. So that testosterone is what make a man a man. The physical attribute of a man. But conversely, women have 100 times more estrogen than a man, and that's what the physical attribute of a female. But for a woman, her testosterone level is actually the highest compared to the 3, and that hormone actually dropped the first compared to estrogen and progesterone. And the same thing that a testosterone work in men, it will work same way in women, as in sexual desire, muscle building, and decreasing fat, energy, focus, as well as building muscle bone. So typically you see a woman in her 70s, right, who has osteoporosis, who lost muscle mass, who shrunk, an inch, maybe 2, who has less muscle mass and more frail and easy to fall, is because of the changes in really testosterone, believe it or not. And
That's
oftentimes
really
women
interesting.
neglect that. They neglect that they actually need testosterone, not only just for the bedroom performance, but that's the first thing women will notice when they get, in their 40s, right? It's like their sexual desire is not as it was when they were in their 20s or 30s. But
Right.
that, but people always focus on, oh, hot flashes and night sweats and the other part of menopause, but not so focusing on the hormone that's testosterone. I would tell you this: most women that get hormone replacement therapy, they don't get their testosterone replaced. Usually it's just estrogen, maybe progesterone, but not so much testosterone.
Mm. So let me ask you this. When Let's go a little younger than 60s or 70s, because a lot of our viewers are in their late 40s and 50s here. And so when you've got, let's just say, a couple who's about 55 years old, somewhere in their 50s, and the woman may have had a lowered libido for, you know, a few years to 10 years at this point, or maybe more. I see this in the comments a lot, how the woman's just like, okay, I could take it or leave it these days. And that's frustrating for their male partner. So does it happen later for men, that loss of libido?
Can you clarify your question again, specifically, like compare men and women? Does men
Yeah, so if
lose
you
their
have a
libido
couple,
later?
exactly, because oftentimes you will hear men say, "Oh, my wife doesn't really, she's not interested in sex anymore," and it's because of
Uh
menopause.
huh. Uh
Why
huh.
does that hit women? That loss of libido, it seems to hit women sooner. Is that right?
Not necessarily. It's probably around the same time.
Hmm.
But what the women may notice, that's like, so what I'm trying to say is that it's around the same time at like around 40ish, but
Wow.
testosterone decreased, but then estrogen also decreased too. So when estrogen decreased, she may have less moisture down there. It may be, not it may be uncomfortable, or maybe just a
Yeah.
little discomfort, maybe not. But
Or a lot.
yeah, or a lot. So that may play a role into that as well. And she may or may not know what's going on there, because when your hormone level changes, the microbiome in the vaginal area also changes, the pH also changes, the lubrication and the hydration in the area changes, not to even account for the muscular changes that happened in the pelvic floor, and also the skin changes as well. And also, I mean, I'm at the period when I was giving children that they give episiotomy, which they cut the vaginal floor to get the baby out. They don't do that anymore. But if you're in your 50s, most likely if you had children, you've been cut. And when that's been cut, there's a scar tissue that connect the vaginal canal into the pelvic floor that weakens it, right? So imagine like the pelvic muscle, like a sling, and over time the sling just sags. And when that sags, that's going to affect how she will feel during sexual activity, as well as
Hmm.
bladder. So you have to account the physiological changes as well as the physical changes and the
Right.
hormonal changes that occurs with the woman down there. So they occur at the same time. Remember, I mentioned that a man testosterone level is 100 times more than a woman. So he may, for a man after the age of 35, he loses 1%, 1 to 2% a year. But if he's at, let's say he like your viewer's age, let's say he's 45 years old or 50, he's only lost 10% or 15%, right? But he's still got 100. So he's still got around 80, 85 or so. So he can still have more libido left versus a woman who has 1/10 of that. If she's lost a certain percentage, she may have less libido. So it's really comparing the quantity because he has a lot more testosterone than she does. And then she probably has more physical changes that's going on in the sexual organ than he does. Does that make sense? Where there may
Yes,
be a
definitely.
discrepancy?
Definitely, definitely. So I know that you are, well, you're an expert on all this material, but I know you particularly focus on and talk about and are known for helping men with ED, erectile dysfunction, and let's just call the words what they are, penis health and all that kind of thing. And I'd love to ask you in a minute about all that on the woman's body. But can you talk to us a little bit about what happens to a male's penis as they get to be in their late 40s and 50s?
Okay, do you
I've
mean
heard that
like the
there is,
physical changes that
yeah. So, I
happen to
mean,
a man?
yes, I mean, what's the difference between ED and I've heard there's actual penile shrinkage that happens? Is that really common or not? That kind of thing.
Right, right. So that's kind of a two question in there. So what happened? Let's go back to what happened when a man gets older with aging. And in fact, I did give a talk to 300 men yesterday about, what happened when a man ages, physical and changes to a man. Everything kind of starts around the age 35. Mother Nature thinks that after the age of 35, a man should be aging and should be not be continuing the human line. So after the age of 35, he loses about 1 to 2% of his testosterone every year. So when he loses testosterone or the testosterone concentration that he normally produces is less, what happens is that the penis has testosterone receptors in its cell. And so when the receptors are no longer being filled with testosterone, so imagine receptor as like a hole for the key. The testosterone is the key, and the receptor is where the key goes into, right? But the receptors are there, but you have less of the testosterone, which is the key that fit into that hole to open that door. So what happened is that the penis muscle or the corpus cavernosum muscle have less testosterone to fill the opening. What happens is that the muscles start to have some mild atrophy over time. So that's why it causes some atrophy, and you see men will say the shrinkage. All right. So it's really a relative term because it's dependent upon the testosterone. But then also, if a man starts to have symptoms of ED, and ED is really defined as the inability for a man to have enough rigidity for
Hmm.
penetration. All right. So he can
Right.
still have an erection, but it's just difficult for erection or that he loses it during sexual activity. If he has ED, he's not able to have a full erection or cannot have an erection. And I mentioned about the muscle atrophy, but then the atrophy can also be replaced with scar tissue or fibrous tissue,
Oh,
which it fill into the outside of the muscle in the kind of like the fatty area that is compound upon the penis shrinkage, right? So not only do you have the actual
wow.
muscle atrophy, but you also have the scar tissue that get developed on top of that as well. So
Does
that
that cause then
accounts for that.
pain?
No, it doesn't cause any pain whatsoever. So the scar
Okay.
tissue is just replaced in the area where there's no muscle. So there is no pain at all. It's just more of, a smaller size, flaccid, and maybe smaller when he's erect because he's not getting enough blood flow in to fill the penis. So when the penis is erect, it actually has 40 times more blood flow in it
Wow.
than when it is flaccid. All right. Now, it's the same thing with women too. Women, when she's aroused, the vaginal area also has erection tissue, and that is her clitoris. Her
Yes.
clitoris is the only sexual organ that she has, but that clitoris actually fills up with blood exactly like a penis with erection. So for a man, it's more visible, right? He sees it every day. It's a lot larger than a clitoris. But the good news is that it is not irreversible. So if this happened and he does see some shrinkage, then a good way to do that is really using the penis pump. What the penis pump does, it's like a vacuum. It's like a vacuum pump, and I have one of the penis pump that I like to recommend here. This is called the Soma Erect STF, right? And it's manual pump. And just he put his penis through here and pumps it, and it create negative suction that will give him a full erection, a full on erection.
Wow.
And what it does is that it brings in oxygenated blood, so blood that has oxygen in it. And what it does is expand the muscle, the corpus cavernosum, and it also brings in oxygen. So that way the muscle get to have good vitality. And then it also will decrease the scar tissue by expanding the muscle, and it allowed the penis to almost get exercise, right? Expansion and
Wow.
then relaxation as well. So it prevent atrophy. So this is the tool that every man should have in his house. And I recommend that he use it at least 3 times a week or every day if he can for about 5 minutes, because it brings in blood, it expands the muscle, it prevents scar tissue development. And if he uses it about probably around 6 weeks, he's going to start to noticing that the reversal of the shrinkage and may regain back his size, as well as maybe have
Wow.
an increase in size at about half an inch in length, as well as a half an inch in girth.
Wow. Wow. Well, is there any such thing as something like that for women? I have heard in a lot of my viewers, a lot of my viewers have mentioned in the comments that, oh my gosh, wait till you get to the point where your clitoris literally disappears. It starts shrinking. And, I didn't even know that was a thing. So, if
Yes,
could you talk a little bit
yeah.
about that and how a woman might be able to, I don't know if that can be reversed or helped in any way? That sounds so
Yes, yes,
depressing.
it can. It can be reversed. I don't know if your listener know, but not only does the clitoris shrink, but the labia minora, the lips, also shrink. So when girls are born, they don't have a labia minora, right? But as she start getting menses, that a period, then that minora start to develop at that stage. But when a woman is in menopause over years, the labia minora or the lips start to shrink, and it start to look gradually even disappear. So it's kind of like you kind of reverse back to where you were when you were first born. So it's the clitoris. So the clitoris also is atrophy in the same way that the penis atrophy. Because if you're not getting the clitoris aroused, then it's not getting enough blood flow. When it's not getting enough blood flow, then the muscle is going to atrophy and also be replaced by scar tissue. Not only that, I mentioned earlier that the pelvic floor muscle is like a sling. So the foreskin that you would see in the man is the foreskin that you see for the clitoris. The foreskin kind of it kind of covers the clitoris, and the clitoris seems like it's kind of hidden, right? But what happened is that the pelvic floor muscle start to sag and the foreskin start to ride over the clitoris as well, and also the pelvic muscle for the woman start to get lax. So when that gets lax, that the sling again forces everything down. So that sometimes you'll hear women have a vaginal prolapse, right? Or uterus prolapse, or even
Okay. Okay.
bladder prolapse, because the muscle in the pelvic area is not able to hold up all those organs that are
Right.
contained just above the pelvic area. So the clitoris do shrink, and the clitoris is a woman's penis. And the only function of the clitoris in a woman is to give her pleasure. It has no other function than for pleasure itself. But how often does a woman somewhat pleasure her clitoris other than sexual activity, right? So to get to your point, I encourage women to masturbate if she's not having sexual relations, because when you masturbate, you're bringing blood flow to the clitoris, which prevents you from getting atrophy and scar tissue as well. Advise women to do Kegel exercises that will strengthen the pelvic muscle, but will also help with orgasm, clitoral orgasm, as well as vaginal orgasm
Really? I did
as
not know
well.
that.
Too. Yes,
Kegels do.
yes.
Okay.
Kegel exercise will help with orgasm, and so not all women, but women also ejaculate as well too. So that will help with that. Only about 15% of women actually have vaginal orgasm, but most
I did not
women,
know that
most
either.
99% of women have a clitoral orgasm. Okay, so there is one company, it's called Dr. Kaplan, that do make a vaginal pump that is similar to this, but because of the woman anatomy is a little difficult to kind of isolate the clitoris. And are you doing the clitoris, and you're doing the whole
Right.
vulva? Are you doing the whole labia minora, right? The whole vulva area encompassing. So we don't know whether there is one that is called the clitoral suction. There's one that covers the whole
Oh,
vulva region. But yes, there are some that does it, that do have a vaginal pump. And honestly, what I recommend is that, yes, use that. It's also a good thing to have frequent sexual relation, 3 times a week, or even masturbate, because,
yeah, I was just about to ask
yeah,
you. So basically, if we, stop having sex or don't have it as often as before, it just makes the problem worse, it sounds like, from what
yes,
you're saying. It makes the
absolutely.
libido worse.
Yes, yes. So what a lot of men and women don't realize is that if you continue to use your sexual organs, right, for pleasure or for procreation, then your desire will increase because of that. It's the feedback, the positive feedback. People think that you have to have desire and arousal first, which is in the brain, to get things started down below, right? But sometimes when things get started down below, will give a positive feedback up to your brain to increase your arousal and your desire. So there's a saying, you don't use it, you lose it, right? True.
Yes.
You don't use the sexual organ, especially for a woman. A man does not have one organ that's purely for pleasure. Yes, his penis is used to urinate. His penis used for sexual relation, but his penis also used for ejaculation as well too. But for a woman, her clitoris is a pure organ for pleasure, right? If she doesn't use it, she's going to lose it because it's going to start to get atrophy. It doesn't get blood flow down there. And then it's a feedback loop, right? So if you're not
Yeah.
getting aroused down there, you're not getting that feedback loop up to the brain, and then she'll feel less desire as well. And then it creates a negative feedback loop because she's not having, either she doesn't have masturbate or sexual relation or bringing blood flow down to the vaginal area. And then it becomes discomfort as she ages
Yeah.
and she gets into menopause due to lubrication, due to the laxity of the pelvic muscle, and due to hormonal changes. So there's multiple factors that compound
Yeah.
upon that.
So it's just not fun
Yeah,
anymore. That's
yeah.
what it sounds like happens eventually. Yeah. Or can
Well,
happen.
yeah, yeah, it's not fun anymore. It's uncomfortable, but most
Right.
women don't realize that it can be reversed. It can be easily, all these things that I mentioned can be easily reversible with some topical estrogen, topical testosterone, and the labia, and
I did not
some
know. I myself use
progesterone.
topical estrogen, but I did not know you could get topical testosterone for women as
Yes,
well.
absolutely.
So
Yes,
that's vaginal as well?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be compounded. It can be compounded together with the estrogen. I that's what I use. So I'm in my mid 50s now, and I'm in menopause, full blown menopause. So I use a compounded testosterone along with estrogen that I put on my labia every day, and then I take a progesterone pill at nighttime to help me with my mood and my sleep. So that's my
Mhm.
regimen right now. I do Kegel about 3 times a week. In fact, you can do Kegel in the car. Sometimes I'm in the car and I'm bored, I'm doing my Kegel exercises, and my gynecologist tells me I have a vaginal tissue of like a 30-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
for those watching and listening who don't know or they're not sure if they know, can you please describe how to do Kegels?
Right. Well, it's actually more complicated than it is. Okay. Even myself, I thought, oh, I'm a doctor. I've been doing this for a long time. I know how to do Kegel. I find out that I was doing Kegel wrong because I went to see a physical therapist. I just want to make sure that I was doing it right. So I went to see a physical therapist who specializes
I did
in
too.
pelvic floor exercise and find out
Yeah.
that, I was doing it too much. I was too overzealous in contracting my pelvic muscle. So when you do your pelvic muscle, you only want to use the muscle that is responsible for stopping and starting your urine stream. So when you urinate, all right, you want to kind of use those muscles to stop and start the urine stream. This is applicable for men and for women. So those are the muscles that you want to target. But oftentimes when we do Kegel, we'll tighten up a buttock muscle or we
Mhm.
hold our
Mhm.
breath as well,
Right.
or we do it too much. So you want to do just enough that if you're gonna like urinate and stop and urinate, that's kind of like the light force that you want to do. So and you want to hold it. So you want those the muscle that you target. In fact, you can put your hand down there and actually feel it, but it should be light. Your whole entire vaginal muscle shouldn't be contracting. Certainly, your buttocks shouldn't be contracting as
Right.
well. And yeah, so that is the main thing. So I suggest that she goes see maybe one to three sessions with a pelvic floor physical therapist, and there is a website that you can find therapists that are specialized in pelvic floor. I forgot the website of that. I'll give that to you.
Okay,
uh,
great. We'll put it
that
down in the
they can look.
description.
Yeah, that they can look to find out. These are certified pelvic floor specialized therapists, and oftentimes the therapists actually put their finger into your vaginal canal to see if you're contracting it adequately.
Yeah,
And I can
yeah.
tell you, I'm doing it wrong. Most people will do it wrong as well because I was doing it too much. But interestingly, most pelvic floor dysfunction is really due to you holding it too tightly versus too lax. Yeah, so it's really more tightness rather than weakness. Rather, most of the time, you should be relaxing it more rather than trying to tighten it more. So it's kind of like contradict what you think. It's like, oh, my pelvic floor muscle is weak. It's because sometimes we're stressed that we hold it down there tight more. And especially we do that during sexual activity. So if anything,
Mhm.
you need to relax those pelvic muscle
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
if you strengthen it, it will actually improve your orgasm. It will improve the female ejaculate. Most don't, but it also improved the whole experience. Well, not only that, but for women, it helps you with your bladder function, meaning you don't have
Yes.
to urinate every hour and you
You
can
don't have
hold it in for a
leakage.
longer period of time. Yes, and prevent leakage as well.
Yeah, I've had some of those incontinence issues, not full blown incontinence like what you fear might happen when you're 90, but, just a little leakage here and there. And also, just the urgency is horrifying. That's why I went to the pelvic floor uh, physical therapist myself. And, I didn't have any idea what it was going to be all about. And so it wasn't it's not surprising looking back on it, but I remember, and I'm telling the audience this in case they want to go to see a physical therapist who specializes in this. Yes, they do use their fingers into your vagina to feel you to see if you're doing it correctly and to
Mhm.
see how much you can strengthen that. And I just want people to know that so it doesn't take you off guard a little bit. Because if you're a very private person, it can be a little surprising, shall we say. But I know you're supposed to hold it then for a few seconds. She had me hold it at first for 4 seconds and then inch up to 6 and then to 8 at a time.
Right,
How about
right.
you? Is that
Yeah,
about right?
yeah, yeah, that's about right. You wanna hold it for you start with, like, 3 seconds, but then you wanna coordinate that with your
The
breathing.
relaxing. Yeah,
Right. When you're tightening, the muscle or contract the muscle, you want to exhale, you wanna breathe out. You wanna breathe
right.
out as you're contracting the muscle, and as you're relaxing the pelvic muscle, you wanna breathe in. So contract,
Okay.
breathe out. All right. So you want to coordinate that with breathing and start with 3 seconds first and do 10 reps and then do 3 sets of that. All right. And that's what you start with three with the goal of progressing to 10 seconds. But when you first start out, start with 3 seconds, go to 5 seconds, and then go to 8 seconds, and then go to 10 seconds. The longer you can hold it, the stronger you get. But you don't want to tighten up your whole entire butter because I see that happening a lot. And when you do that, it's counterintuitive and you're not going to get the improvement.
Right, right. So I know you've talked to me before in the past about other things that, at least from the man's side of things, but I think it probably works, but I know it works both ways, that a man can and ought to, and a woman too, work on to make their sexual health better and their sexual relationships better. That involves better communication and also health, and that's a whole nother topic. But you've talked to me about how oftentimes the lack of opening up about these things, which can be awkward and therefore hard to do, but sometimes can exacerbate these physical problems. Can you talk to us
Right.
about that a bit?
Yeah, so particularly like how to talk to your partner when you have issues for a man. Well, it's harder for a man because the last person he's going to talk to is really his wife or his partner. All right, because it's embarrassing because it's demasculating for a man to not be able to have an erection to perform. I have seen many men of his wife will give an ultimatum and say, hey, if you're not able to perform in the bedroom and you're not able to please me, then don't touch me until you are. If not, and some men are like giving ultimatum, we're done. We're done if that can't be done. Yes, I mean, and they're coming to see me at the last resort and say, I gotta be able to perform or else my wife will leave me. And so
Well, it
uh,
happens the reverse too, I think.
yes, absolutely. It can happen in reverse, absolutely, as well. But it's a sad thing to say, but it
Yeah.
does happen. I see it. I just saw a patient on Tuesday, and he said that to me.
Wow.
Those were his exact words. So the communication is key because research has shown that if there is transparent, open communication between the partner, that is actually in itself, it's a treatment for ED. If a man has ED, he has an open discussion about it with his partner about it, and she supports him. She understands what that is. He feel less performance anxiety. He feel less stress when they're together, and that in itself will allow him to get a better erection.
Hmm.
And I want to stress that to get an erection for a man and a woman, both, is that it starts in the brain. Your brain is a larger sexual organ. And so you got to have things get started in here first before you can get things happening below the belt. If they have to start out in here, but if the man opens up the conversation and have an open conversation with his partner about his difficulties and that he perhaps need to see a doctor for it first, and she is understanding. And most of the time, the partner are. If you have that initial conversation, instead of trying to go, and try to go online, try to take an ED meds, and then try to do other things, and not really have an open discussion with your partner about it because you're going to bring in anxiety and stress to the
Yeah.
situation, and that's going to disrupt the brain, initiating that arousal, right? So for me, that's why I stress communication. And then another thing is a supportive partner in itself is a treatment for ED because a lot of time is that if things are clear up here in the head, it actually probably accounts for about 50 to 60% of the erection response. So what I'm trying to
Wow.
say is that the psychological component is very pivotal to performance. Like I treat a lot of men where they're functioning in their penis. They're able to get an erection. We can measure the blood flow. Everything is working well, but they still can't get an erection because they are overthinking it, they're anxious, and there's stress going on. There's dynamics going
Yeah.
on between him and his partner. So that's why you still get an erection. So the point I'm
Yeah.
trying to make is that, it physically things are fine, but if you're not getting it clear up in the brain, it's a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of trauma, then it's not going to work either.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that's one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on today is to explain to at least to women, the audience here is mostly women, but we have some men as well. And just to let them know because their partner, as you said, probably won't tell them or doesn't want to tell them, or it will be uncomfortable for the men to talk about it. Let's hope that they do because communication usually helps things rather than, making it worse. But that's one reason I really wanted you to explain to women what's really going on behind the curtain, so to speak. And, as a life coach for 15 years, I talk to a lot of men and women about all kinds of things that are going on in their professional life and their personal lives. And I know from that experience that oftentimes people want to communicate with their partner or one of their loved ones, but they're not sure how. They want to be almost told or given the tools what to say. So, what do you give advice to your male patients on how to broach this topic with their wife or partner?
Yeah, and oftentimes is not blaming anything, taking responsibility. There's no blaming going on, and just being vulnerable and being truthful. Because when you approach it in that sense, you open conversation. You don't want to open up and say, well, you came home the other day and I touched you and you just pushed me away, and I'm not turned on because you're not turned on and you're busy half the time. You know what I mean? You're distracted. You don't
Yes,
want to turn on.
yes,
Like, you want to open up and say, and let's say I'm the wife, I'm the husband talking to the wife and say, honey, I love you. I am attracted to you every day. Every time I look at you, I get turned on and I get aroused by you. And just sometimes I have difficulty when getting that erection. I don't know what is going on, but it's very important for me that we have a good sex life because I'm so attracted to you. I love you, and that's important to me. And I want you to know that, and it's important that you're aware of that, and yeah, we are in this together. How does that sound?
yeah.
Right?
That's
Yeah, it doesn't
great.
sound, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just an open conversation, but you're expressing you're expressing how you feel about your partner. You don't know what's going on. You may not know what's going on, right? But
And how about some talking points or suggestions if you are the woman in the relationship?
well, yeah, so just a woman is that listen to him and just know that if you are supportive of him, that in itself goes a long way. That is a treatment in itself because one of the treatment is that a supportive partner for
Yes.
ED. So you listen to him and say, and say you support him and say, honey, I love you as well. I am here for you. Let me know what you need from me. Let me know what I can do for you. What is it that I can help you with? Tell me. Okay?
Yes,
So,
because truthfully,
yeah.
she's probably feeling a little the same way. Like, it takes me so long to get moist if I do at all. That's really embarrassing. It's a sign of getting old that I don't really want to admit to, much less talk about. So I
Yeah.
think the uncomfortableness is
Right.
probably somewhat equal.
Absolutely. She's probably going to open up herself and say, you know what? I sometimes try to push you away too because it's uncomfortable for me as
Yeah.
well. So, like you said, it will open conversation. But yeah, I would tell you this: most women do not pay attention to that as much. So oftentimes, they actually blame themselves. They blame
Mm,
themselves that I'm not attractive to
I've gained
my
weight.
partner,
Yeah.
right? I gain weight. I'm distracted. Maybe that's why it's uncomfortable down there. That's why maybe it's harder for me to get orgasm. So they often blame themselves. They blame the circumstances instead of trying to say, okay, well, I'm 40, or maybe there's hormonal changes going on in me, and maybe I need to kind of look, go see the doctor and get my hormones level checked. And like if we don't have any equipment, and if I can tell if a woman is in menopause or she has decreased lubrication, I can use a little pH strip. It's a little strip I just swab on her labia, and it will tell me what the pH is, the vagina area. The pH of the vagina should be acidic, right? It should be a little bit below 7.4. But most of the time, it's like 7.2, 7.1. I'm sorry, higher, 7.5, 7.6, which is more basic, right?
Yeah.
So that means that she's not moisture, and she's not well moisturized down there. So it could be a
Yeah.
simple pH strip to evaluate the integrity of that.
Okay, so as we wrap it up, if you could just give me one golden nugget piece of advice for both men and women as they enter and go through andropause or menopause, what would that be?
Well, that would that be is that know that there are physical changes that you're undergoing as well as hormonal changes. And if you do feel that you have less desire, more difficulty in getting more sensation down there, or a man in getting an erection, talk to each other, go see the doctor, get evaluated. Don't try to be going on Google trying to treat yourself, because sometimes, like I said, for a woman, it's as simple as a topical. And for a man, it's as simple as really doing blood work to evaluate whether he has maybe high blood pressure, high cholesterol, maybe he has diabetes, high blood sugar, or low testosterone. And oftentimes, for men and women, diet, if you eat a well balanced diet, like a Mediterranean diet, exercise, 30 minutes, 3 to 5 times a week, sleep 7 hours at night between hours of 10 p.m., 6 a.m., and stress reduction. If you institute those 4 pillars, then oftentimes you can reverse those changes that you feel, other than trying to Google, try to
Yeah.
buy this supplement, try to buy the snake oil, or try to take an ED
Right,
medication, or
right.
doing all that. Oftentimes, you got to kind of do the basic
Yes.
and get the blood work first and see where
Yeah.
you're at, and start with those 4 pillars that I talk about, and it'll go a long, long way.
That is excellent, excellent advice for all of us. Dr. Ann Truong, thank you so, so much for being here. It's been really fun chatting with you.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.